We're delighted to be speaking now with Rawan Hashem from the media consultancy CARMA, which recently produced an in-depth research report analyzing media coverage of Saudi Arabia to identify prominent conversations and sentiments on the kingdom and highlight how Vision 2030 is impacting the global media's perception of the kingdom. Rawan is head of CARMA's Content Insights division with a team of over 80 researchers, editors, and analysts. Rawan, thanks so much for joining the 966.
Hi, Richard. Hi, Lishan. It's great to be here with you on this podcast, and thank you for having me today. I'm really excited to share my insights with you all.
Well, Rawan, we're so happy to have you. I think you might be our first guest from Lebanon, if I'm not mistaken. And I want to, we really appreciate because we have referenced the CARMA reports before on the 966. And then this latest one that came out, analyzed and assessed the first half of 2023, we were really excited about. So when we reached out to you, you said, absolutely, let's do this. But before we do that, we were chatting beforehand, and you said you were born and raised in Beirut. Yes?
Correct.
Can you tell us a little bit about your journey?
Yes, of course. So I studied journalism in Beirut, and then I did master's at Georgetown University in intercultural communication. And then that's when I started working with international organizations on media measurement and evaluation. I have around 17 years of experience in the world of media intelligence, and a significant chunk of that, 9 years to be precise, has been with CARMA. CARMA is a global provider of media intelligence services, or to put it simply, we're all about helping our clients navigate and understand this ever-evolving media intelligence landscape. And our goal is to empower them to make strategic decisions and showcase their success through providing them with top-notch media monitoring and communication evaluation programs. My expertise revolves around turning data into meaningful stories that can truly engage the audience. And I've always been captivated by the art of transforming research into compelling narratives. So during my journey at CARMA, I really had the chance and the pleasure to work with some of the world's most prominent organizations. And what really drives me and my team is this commitment to try to simplify complex data, because you know that in today's fast-paced world, it's crucial for organizations to have a clear understanding of the information available at hand, and that's where we come in.
It is fascinating. I love the title, your title, Director of Content Insights, and you're exactly right. Turning, giving data a narrative makes it so much more useful. And what we sort of do that every day here, because we produce the Sustig Review, which is a daily newsletter, which is curation. So because information is just so massive and so broad and so deep, it's helpful to our audience for us to go through and do a filter or two, one they trust. And so I absolutely understand what you're saying. And CARMA is really interesting. And I guess you guys have like 11 offices, primarily you have one in DC, but it's primarily based in Dubai, but it's primarily Europe and Middle East, correct?
Right. We have 19 offices in the world. We're based in Dubai, but it's a global company. We have offices in London, in Portugal, in Asia, in Cairo, in Beirut. We're all over the place.
Well, let's talk about this study. And we love this because we talk about Vision 2030 all the time on the show. And it informs so much about Saudi Arabia and what's going on in Saudi Arabia. And you know this, but a number of our guests have talked about how it's changed the mindset in Saudi Arabia. Paradigms are different about everything, about how business is conducted, how people approach their daily lives. It's just been extraordinary to watch. It's harder to get a handle on global perceptions. Right. And this is why your study is so fascinating. And the name of the study is A Kingdom Reimagined, How Vision 2030 is Transforming KSA's Reputation. Can you give us the story behind the report? Why this? And we'd love to just hear how it went through and how you developed it.
Sure. So let me take you behind the scenes of this incredible journey. This report is so close to my heart, and we began working, the idea sparked in 2020. So imagine this, 2020, it was a year like no other. And back then, CARMA had the honor of being the media intelligence provider for the G20 summit. It was a global pandemic that has greatly impacted the entire world. But amid all of that, we saw that Saudi Arabia stood out with how it handled the crisis, how it leveraged advanced digital technology to mitigate the pandemic's impact. And witnessing all of that, we couldn't help but be amazed by the country's resilience, the country's innovation. Now, we were in Riyadh during the summit, and that was a profound experience. And we were seeing all the signs, Richard. They were all unmistakable. The country was on the verge of a big transformative era. And as a journalist at heart, I was captivated. I was eager to dive deeper into this fascinating story. And later in the year, when G20 ended, we started to see a new narrative emerging. It was like Saudi Arabia was shedding its old skin and stepping onto this global stage with their blueprint, Vision 2030. And this was not just about oil, it was a bold vision for the future. So as we continued to read the news, to monitor, to analyze data, we began to notice this nuanced shift in how the kingdom was being portrayed across the global media outlets. And the spotlight was no longer about the old stereotypes that we all know. It was that the media was highlighting the nation's strides in innovation and tourism and women empowerment in healthcare and digital technology. And that moment really sparked an idea. And we realized that it was time to capture this evolving narrative in its full glory. So we started working on this report in 2021, and this report didn't just dissect the media coverage. It also delved deep into how this vision was reshaping the global perceptions. So fast forward in 2021, that was the launch of our first report. It's a comparative analysis of how the kingdom was seen in 2020 versus 2021. But our journey did not stop there. We continued to update the report, and really, Richard, each edition was revealing fresh perspectives. And the latest release, which I'm going to talk about today, covers the first half up until the first half of 2023. And the fact that every edition reveals new layers is only a testament to the country's evolution, ongoing evolution. We saw digital leaps to healthcare strides, from investment to education to tourism to sports. We saw that the country kept pushing the boundaries. And that is simply, the story behind the report. It's the story of a nation unlocking its potential, and a CARMA team committed to telling, this amazing journey.
It is fascinating. And by the way, if you were media advisor during the G20, kudos to CARMA, because that was, hosting that event during the pandemic. So it was virtual. I mean, it's extraordinarily difficult proposition. And I know the Saudis, because they wanted this to be a marquee showcase event with everybody coming to Saudi Arabia, so they had to be a little disappointed, but they really pivoted nicely, I thought. And media, and Lucian, we covered the G20, exhaustively. And even in a virtual environment, I thought they did a really good job. So whatever role CARMA played in that, congrats to you. Let's talk about the study. Let's talk about the methodology. I guess, 33 major media markets, but let us know, the depth of it.
Sure. So our research had a clear focus. We wanted to understand the impact of Vision 2030 on Saudi Arabia's reputation and delve into how the nation was being perceived across regional and international top-tier media. That was the objective of the study. Now, the scope of the study was really big, spanning 33 major markets. And think of countries like the United States, Canada, Brazil, all the way to France, Russia, and China. So we cast our net wide to capture a very comprehensive picture. Over 3,600 pieces of content from diverse mediums, newspapers, magazines, online platforms, broadcast. All of these formed the backbone of our study and analysis. And these weren't just your run-of-the-mill content pieces. We looked at articles, features, opinion, op-eds, in-depth pieces, interviews, etc. Now, in terms of the methodology, we used AI to help us process a huge amount of data really fast. And these algorithms were trained to sift through the content, to identify anything related to Saudi Arabia. But of course, and that's where CARMA comes in, the human element, the curation. So the human element played a crucial role too. We had a dedicated team of researchers who were carefully reviewing the content that was being flagged by AI to ensure accuracy at every step of the way. And where it gets interesting is that every piece of content was coded. So like putting them into thematic boxes. So we looked at things like the main topic, the overarching theme, the sentiment expressed. All of this was coded, and this coding gave us a structured foundation for our analysis. Then after coding, we didn't stop there. We brought all these coded pieces together, making a kind of the big picture information. And this is what allowed our analysts and consultants to spot the trends, to decode conversations, and to extract the insights that went beyond the surface. So it was like piecing together a puzzle to reveal the big picture of how Saudi Arabia's image was being portrayed across various markets and various media outlets.
So you collect this vast amount of data, analyze it, assess it, you have it all together. What were your key findings?
Sure. So I'm going to dive into the findings of the latest edition of the report. It will kind of give you a fresh perspectives on the entire journey. Yeah. First, let me set the stage first. The period that we studied was from 2022 to the first half of 2023. And during that period, there were so many events, so many announcements, so many news. So think about the impact of the Russia-Ukraine conflict on global oil markets, Saudi participation in the World Economic Forum, announcement of the US president's visit to the kingdom, the Global AI Summit, the Saudi Historic World Cup win over Argentina, and so on and so forth. So media coverage was at an all-time high during that period. We didn't just, of course, skim the surface, as I said. Our goal was to dig deep, to unearth the essence of this coverage, and to offer insights that can pave the way for future strategic messaging and communication. And Richard, when we talk about media measurement and media evaluation, we're essentially exploring how communication shapes people's awareness, how it changes their perception, and how it changes reputations when it comes to nation. So if I want to start with awareness, our report has revealed that one, Vision 2030's mentions it increased by 27% if you look at the period of the first half of 2023 compared to 2022, to 1 in 5 of all articles. And I'll comment to that later on. The second finding is that the Saudi sports investment strategy has achieved global awareness and coverage, and it now represents 20% of all the coverage in the first half of 2023 compared to only 10% in 2022. And I'll come to that as well. So what does this tell us? this is a sign that Vision 2030 isn't just a buzzword. So it's now firmly rooted in as the driving force behind the transformation of the nation. And that is a substantial win, because while so many countries look forward and aim for transformation, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has managed not only to get people to talk about its vision, but also to grasp and largely support its aspirations. And that's what we saw in the media. Now, this surge in awareness and recognition isn't only also about understanding, it's about embracing the vision. So what we saw is that the vision has become this compass guiding the kingdom's strategic evolution. It's not just a blueprint, it's not just an accomplishment on paper, it's actually a narrative shaping how the kingdom is being seen. So we saw a lot of stories on sports, on tourism, technology, innovation, and that they are captivating the global media. And through these stories, Saudi Arabia is casting off all stereotypes. It's painting a portrait of being a forward-thinking nation, driven by its ambitions, the progress that it's achieving on the ground as well. And to me, this is not just an uptick in brand awareness. It's the country establishing itself as a global player. Now, that's when it comes to awareness. Now, the other finding, the interesting one, is when it comes to perception. And our report has also revealed that the key messages of Vision 2030 appeared in 12% of the coverage, which shows a growing understanding of the national strategy itself. The social topics have also increased by 16%, whereas the economic news declined by 10%. And this shows that the topics of interest for the media are growing beyond oil and macroeconomics. And thirdly, the overall sentiment and favorability towards KSA has increased. So it jumped from 70 to 71%. And the key factor driving this shift in perception is simply the considerable progress that the kingdom has made across so many sectors. We've seen a positive evolution in the narrative that is linked to the success that it has achieved in various areas, ranging from economic diversification to social reforms, to technology, to healthcare. And all of these accomplishments have impacted how the international community, how the global media are now looking at the kingdom. So the media landscape, we've also seen that the media has seen a marginal, but yet I can call it a significant increase in the coverage of positive stories. There's a shift from 70 to 71%. And while this seemingly modest numerical increase, it has a considerable impact because it reflects a consistent trend of highlighting the positive aspects of the kingdom and the media.
So what makes something positive, and how do you, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but how do you discern between what's your approach toward deciding if something is positive or negative?
Sure.
I mean, Richard and I see almost every single news article that comes out on Saudi Arabia.
Yes, of course. We have a strong sentiment coding methodology in place where we look at each article, we count the number of positive messages, the number of negative messages, and then we decide if the article is positive or not. If it's favorably speaking about the kingdom, that's a positive article. If it has balanced messages, that's a neutral article. And if it's criticizing the kingdom, that's a negative article. And a lot of times, because of this subjectivity, we bring in the consultants to make the final say, because this study is based, it's based on objectivity. There's no subjectivity involved at all.
It is interesting, the distinction between awareness and perception. And they're quite different things. And right. I think it's fascinating during this period that you covered. Saudi Arabia, starting in October 2022, essentially embarked on a very sort of controversial oil policy where they cut, and and via OPEC plus, but also with the Saudi in the lead, cut production terrifically. At the same time, they're really, with regard, you mentioned Russia and the invasion of Ukraine, they've tried to stay sort of neutral on that. So there's been policies that globally, certainly from the U.S. perspective, have been problematic. But as you say, even in this sort of traditional focus, oil and other diplomacy that Saudi Arabia, that we see Saudi Arabia, it's making headway in terms of awareness and perception. I think it's fascinating. You referenced a few of them. The spikes. So that one of the graphs in the report is the trends, positive trends and negative trends. And I want to come back to the negative trends. And it sort of notes spikes. And so the spikes, like the Global AI Summit, launch of gaming and esports strategy, a spike with the win over Argentina, spike when Saudi Arabia hosted FIFA World Cup 2023, spike when 2 Saudi astronauts successfully arrived to the International Space Station. These have nothing to do with oil, nothing to do with, a global diplomacy or global politics. They have to do with, obviously, some of them have to do with football, which is, universally loved, and Saudi Arabia is deeply into it now. But it is interesting how these are completely different touch points for the layman, sort of the regular consumer of whatever comes over the news about Saudi Arabia.
And it's impressive how Saudi Arabia has overcome the political obstacles and it did that by leveraging its socioeconomic innovations, because the kingdom has done really strategic efforts and efforts to move beyond its historical association with oil and politics. And these have all yielded remarkable results, and we've seen that in the media. So it shifted from being perceived primarily as an oil-driven economy and a hub for political activity to emerging as a vibrant nation with social dynamism, with cultural vitality. And that all was revealed in our report as well. And as you mentioned, new topics have emerged that have never been associated with the kingdom before. Talk about sports, talk about diplomacy, talk about tourism. And our report has, in fact, shown that the coverage of social topics that are related to Saudi Arabia increased by an impressive 16% in this edition. And this only underscores the growing interest and recognition of the kingdom's socio-cultural developments. And at the same time, we've also seen a decline of around 10% and the coverage of economic news during the same time frame. And this also indicates a nuanced transition, from focusing mainly on economic aspects and oil to acknowledging the broader social, cultural, and even a human element that is all contributing to this evolving identity of the kingdom.
So in the report, you break out several sections. One of them is economic heights, the economy, economic news. And I guess there's an improvement of 23%. And you specifically, in the report, it specifically mentions that the economic coverage was primarily driven by the expanding reach of the influence of the public investment fund.
Right.
And it was interesting. Some of the examples, the launch of Riyadh Air, the investment in Nintendo, this is sort of PIF, but separate, but, the announcement of New Marabba. And so can you tell us a little bit about the economic messaging and how it's being received?
Can you repeat the last sentence, please, Richard?
To tell us, in looking at the economic messaging, and how it's being received, because PIF is extraordinarily active. Saudi Arabia has giga project announcement after giga project announcement. And they're actually, one of the interesting things about 2023 is you're actually seeing real progress on the ground with a lot of these major initiatives.
Yes.
And it seems like this is being well received globally.
It is, and it shifted from being an oil-driven economy, and that's the interesting part, into an economy that is reliant on diversification, from sports, from tourism. So the economic aspects highlighted in the coverage are mainly related to how the kingdom is investing in new touch points, in sports, in healthcare, and innovation, instead of being solely an oil-driven economy.
And according to the report, its diplomatic moves, some of its diplomatic moves have been well received too. And
diplomatic moves as well, correct?
Yeah, go ahead.
And sports, tourism, and diplomacy, these three things have taken root in the global perception. So if we want to talk about, the sports, tourism, and diplomacy, we can see that these three topics are taking the spotlight and getting ton of attention in 2023. And what's really driving this change, it's because the country is shaking things up with smart moves to simply show the world a different side. So let's talk about, if we want to talk about sports, Richard, the country is going all in on sports. Not just on the field, but also behind the scenes as well. So they're investing big time, they're building cool sports infrastructure, they're nurturing talent, they're making deals with key players, and the media is picking up on that. And this push is turning Saudi Arabia into a major player on this global sports stage. And this is what the media is talking about. And they're hosting big events. Athletes are winning. They're making waves worldwide. And to be honest, it's not just about sports here. It's also about bringing the nation together with pride, over these new topics. If we want to talk about tourism, the country is opening its doors to tourists like it never did before. The country is showing off their rich history, their cultural treasures. They're even making travel easier, relaxed visa rules, promoting their destinations. So it's like telling everyone, come check us out. And this move is not just introducing Saudi Arabia to new travelers, it's expanding its appeal way beyond business, way beyond politics, way beyond oil. So it's like telling everyone we're more than just you thought we were once were. So this shift in the conversation, it really points to something bigger as well, that the country is not just about politics and money anymore. It's becoming known for sportsmanship, tourism, diplomacy, and so on. And the media is, of course, picking up on this.
It is. And we talk a lot about the reasons for the sports initiative. It's not only, marquee acquisitions abroad or high wealth, football transfers. It's really about participation and health at home, and as you say, building this national identity. Because as we know, and we've talked about in the 966, Saudis, like so many in the region, Saudis love their football, and it goes way back to the 50s and 60s. And what's going on has even created even more sort of loyalty and passion about it all. So, but let's talk about the largest negative that came out of the report was had to do with sports washing and accusations of sports washing. What was CARMA's assessment of that?
So we definitely believe that there will always be negative mentions in the media around Saudi Arabia. That will never stop. But the amount of positivity has surpassed the amount of negativity, and that's a very good indication of where the kingdom is heading. We've seen a lot of articles on sports washing, accusing the kingdom, of using sports to launder, to clean up its image. But we really think that the kingdom is undergoing this journey of transformation, and this journey of transformation, it's changing how we see the kingdom. And it's not just about looking cool, it's about the cultural growth, economic growth that we're seeing on the ground. So it's like the country is stepping onto this global stage with a whole new identity, and everyone is watching that. So the progress is real, the achievements are there, they're real, and we can see them, and the media is picking up on that.
Fascinating. And you know, in one of the graphs in the report, you talk about the positive awareness, positive perception has moved up to 71%. Negative has remained pretty consistent. And I guess in your world and your, you know, awareness of people's perceptions, there's always sort of a hardcore negative that you're never going to get past. It's never going to be just like, as with the United States, which has negative perceptions as well as positive. You're never going to eliminate all the negative perceptions.
At all. Correct.
But you know, one of the things that, again, and this was really interesting to us, and we talk about it on the 966, is what do you choose to discuss and what do you choose to focus on? And in terms of the current narrative of Saudi Arabia, there are, just as you've outlined, you know, while we've been speaking, all these different narrative storylines that are very compelling and very front forward and are very meaningful to Saudi Arabia. And maybe this is what we should be talking about more so. And the beauty of this is whatever we feel, as your report sort of validates it's getting some traction. So with this traction, what are the recommendations that CARMA has, you know, for what's next, how to leverage this progress?
Sure. So I've talked about the amazing work, and this is great. But drawing from the experience of other nations, we can outline some recommendations. One is about to back up the promises, and backing up the promises is about showing, not just telling. So we recommend opening the doors of the impressive Giga projects to the world to see. It's like an open invitation, you know, for global inspection, for media tours. And we're drawing here from the experience of Dubai, just like how Dubai caught everyone's attention with the Burj Khalifa during its constructions. So when people can actually see the progress happening, not just words, see it's real, see the tangible progress, it's hard to ignore it. And it also creates a buzz of excitement around what they're doing. So they can share stories about the successful sales, the partnerships, the investments, and the sectors that are especially on the rise these days. So it's like showing the world that we're not just talking the talk, we're actually walking the walk. They can share these wins. They can let the world know that they're not afraid to work with others on a global scale. And they can this can send a message of openness and collaboration, that it's not just about us, it's about joining hands with the world to achieve something bigger. Another recommendation we also came across in our report is about telling the social liberation story. And telling the social liberation story is about celebrating personal achievements, sharing local success stories, highlighting the beauty of each and every corner in the kingdom. Every year, more and more women are achieving their dreams, they're graduating, and it's not just numbers. This is a very powerful story of achievement, of progress, that it helps show the world what they are doing. There's also the Saudis who traveled abroad to study and are now backed. These stories of personal growth of the people and their accomplishments need to take center stage. They need to share stories that go beyond Riyadh and Jeddah, because it's time to widen the lens and bring stories from all corners of the kingdom. You know, Riyadh and Jeddah are amazing, no doubt, but Saudi Arabia is so much more than these two cities. When we tell the liberation story, Richard, we're not just talking about number and statistics. We're like telling the world about the journey of individuals, of humans, the growth of the community, the diversity of our nation. And it helps to break down the old stereotypes and to show a side of the kingdom that's vibrant, that's youthful, that's dynamic, and that's filled with promises. Finally, of course, there needs to be a continuing focus on Vision 2030, because Vision 2030 is like a roadmap that's guiding the kingdom's journey to the future. And as the time goes on, it's natural that things will evolve. So this means that there might be updates, there might be enhancements to the vision. It's like upgrading, our navigation system for a better route. So when we zoom out, it's not just about us anymore. It's about the global impact. And it's important to highlight the campaigns that to capture the attention of the world more and more. Think of Vision 2030 as a story of transformation. And with every update, with every campaign, we're like adding a new chapter to this narrative. It's about highlighting Vision 2030 from the people's perspective, from the community's perspective, and highlighting more and more the nation's journey towards this bright future ahead of the kingdom.
It's been fascinating. Yeah, and those of us paying attention, when this Vision 2030 idea, and as you know, there's vision programs all over the world. Lots of countries have them. And when it was first sort of broached and became on our radar, which was late 2015, then it became official. Yes. It became official April 2016.
Right.
And I think for everybody, so in our shop here, and I remember saying, all right, so here's a roadmap, here's a template. Are you going to do the work? And I think what's really been notable, and I like it or not, this really needs to be attributed largely to the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, because he is a true believer. He's a dynamo. He thinks this is the right way to go. And, he's all in on making it successful. So, 7 years later, by all accounts, Saudi Arabia is doing the work. And it's interesting in this report to see now perceptions, awareness catching up, and then perceptions will follow after that. And I think from the Saudi perspective, they have to be pleased, because at the end of the day, they're doing this for themselves. They're not doing this for the world. But it's gratifying, and it's also important in many ways that the world understand that it's being done, and appreciate that it's being done.
It's no longer aspirational, and what once seemed back in 2016 like a difficult task is now actually a reality. And Vision 2030 has really touched the lives of millions of people inside the kingdom. It has transformed the country. So it's happening. And if I talk about my experience, every time I visit Riyadh, I feel something has changed a lot. And every time I'm caught by surprise by the spirit of the city and how it's changing. And Richard, there isn't really an adjective big enough to describe the change that the country has seen. Yeah. I remember back in the days when we women used to visit Riyadh, we used to we had to wear scarves, we had to wear the abaya, but it's not the case anymore. The country is opening up, and this is what Riyadh represents now, is a testament, to the achievement of Vision 2030 and the winds of change happening across the kingdom.
Absolutely. Rawan Hashem, head of CARMA's Content Insights Division, discussing shifting media perceptions of Saudi Arabia. Just an awesome conversation. Thank you so much, Rawan.
Thank you both. I've really enjoyed sharing these insights on the podcast with you today. And from my role as the head of insights at CARMA, as I said, I've really witnessed the transformation journey through the media intelligence. But I want to leave you with the thought that this journey isn't just about media intelligence or data analysis. It's about changing lives, building bridges, creating a better future and a brighter future for the kingdom. So thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to more exciting discussions ahead.